Welcome back. Thanks for staying on. The Newsfeed PM continues now. President Cyril Ramaphosa will lead the country's delegation at the 80th session of the UN General Assembly starting this Tuesday, where urgent global issues will be discussed. Minister in the Presidency, Nkumbuzo Ntshavheni, has called this an opportunity for South Africa to use the platform to reinforce its commitment to global human rights, sustainable development, and peaceful conflict resolution. For more on this, we're joined now by Professor Angelo Dube, Director of the School of Law at the University of South Africa. Prof, good to have you and thank you very much for your time.
Thank you so much for having me and good afternoon.
The 80th gathering of the United Nations, 193 or so countries, right? And they are calling it Better Together. How interesting that countries that would have come together for the sake of unity have got to be reminded that we are better together.
Yep. Because if you look at what has been happening of late, there have been doubts about whether the UN is still relevant, whether the multilateral system is still working as it should. Therefore, it's important for them to remind each other, especially the superpowers such as the United States of America, who tend to want to go it alone, who tend to want to go wrong, to be reminded that even though they're a superpower, they still need everybody. We are better if we stand together as states than if we show our muscles and say we are the US, we can do whatever we want. So it's a very timely message that they are sending out there, but we hope that the deliberations they're going to have will indeed result in UN reforms and other reforms that we're calling for at the global stage.
Yeah, why should South Africa still care about the UN today? I mean, why should we value this particular multilateral for defending human rights, for example, considering the type of things that we've seen going on in the world?
Look, South Africa should care for this one reason, that when the UN was formed back in the day, we were still under apartheid, so we didn't have much of a say. Me and you did not have a say. The people who were leading the South African delegation back then when the UN was formed, when all those human rights instruments were formed, back at home, they did not see me and you as human beings. Yet they were fighting for human rights at the global scale. We came into power, we took over. We need to make sure that now that we're in power, we're using that power to advance equality, to advance democracy, to advance the protection of human rights and the peaceful resolution of conflict at the global stage. And for us to do that, we need to lead the charge, as we have been leading it, to call for reforms, because only with a reformed and better United Nations can we deliver the mandate to see global democracy, sustainable development, and international peace. Yeah.
There's some who believe that one of the key issues, of course, that will be discussed is the recognition of Palestine's statehood, right? We have 147 countries already recognizing Palestine, but of course, Canada, Belgium, Australia, France, will now also express the same. South Africa is going there knowing full well that this is an Achilles heel, if you like, of the United States. Yeah. And they've already sent a strong message by banning Palestine from actually participating here. What is that kind of move communicating? Either to Canada, to France, to Belgium, but most importantly also to South Africa that's heading there.
The funny thing is that state recognition is both a political and a legal mandate. The Montevideo Convention on statehood is clear on what constitutes a state. Palestine ticks all the boxes. All the 4 elements of statehood are there. However, there's the political element where at the United Nations level, somebody needs to push that mandate and the United Nations must endorse the statehood of Palestine. South Africa knows that this is not going to happen, but still they're going to push for it. You see the likes of Macron who are about to leave power, now suddenly getting ballsy and being able to defend the statehood of Palestine. That tells you just how political this thing is, because the United States will utilize its veto power at the Security Council to kill whatever move has been made to recognize Palestine. But what it says, though, what we can draw from this is that the more states agitate towards the recognition of Palestine, the more that those who are opposing will begin to be just background noise more than anything else. So we need more of these voices coming forward. We need South Africa to sustain the call for the recognition of Palestine, so that here's how it helps. It also helps because if Palestine is recognized, then whatever human rights abuses are also happening at the hands of Palestinians, we can hold that entity accountable because it is a state, unlike now when it is not a state.
Now, we see that happening in the context, of course, of a United States that's less and less supportive of multilateral platforms, particularly UN platforms. I mean, the relationship between the United States and the UN has not been rosy to start with, but the Trump administration has almost put a stamp on that and has retreated in terms of support financially and otherwise, and an indication sometimes, at times, of a United States that is breaking away from rules-based international order. Do you think the United States will value anything that will come from this sitting?
Under Trump, there's no value for anything, even for human life. You've seen how they take human life easily without consequence. And you've seen how they're watering down the UN system and the multilateral system as it is. You've seen how there's agitation to move UN offices away from the US into Kenya, which is in Africa, which would be very, very good for us if we were to embrace that as states and pump money into the running of the United Nations. Because what's also giving the US the guts to behave the way it is that, to be frank, they've been funding the UN. They feel like they own it. And that's the mistake that states have made over the years. We need to start getting to a point where states put their money where their mouth is. We cannot run away from multilateralism. It was set up for a reason. Otherwise, if we run away from it, we're going back to the days of Hitler. And that's where Donald Trump is taking us right now, if he's not reined in.
Yeah, one of the areas that is pointed out as an outstanding issue, really, is, for example, how the Security Council is dealing with the issues of Haiti. But, I mean, we can now extend it and put it Ukraine, you can extend it, put it Palestine, Israel, whether or not that force or that instrument is still effective.
The challenge with the Security Council will always be the veto power, number one. The second challenge is that it's still the 5 powers that were there at the beginning. When we became states fully recognized, we didn't have access to the Security Council. So unless the veto power is done away with, and unless African states such as South Africa, which has proven itself on the continent as a champion for human rights and global governance, are given access to the UN Security Council, we will not get anywhere. Because whatever resolution is taken, all that the US has to do is to not vote. And that becomes a veto. It becomes an objection, and it falls away. So they cannot take resolutions to intervene, despite clear violations of human rights. Look at Israel. It's running rampant in the Middle East. It has not just demolished Palestine. It has done the same to Lebanon and to Qatar just the other day. The bombing of other nations, violating their sovereignty, violating their territorial integrity, because the US is covering Israel. And nothing will happen to Israel, despite more than 5 countries being destroyed by Israeli actions in the Middle East.
So what needs to happen in the reforms to combat these global challenges? I mean, you've got shifting global economics, you've got geopolitical and technological landscape that is shifting, you've got those who are calling for bolder moves, not incremental as we have seen over the years.
See, apart from the political, we need to focus on the economic. It would be useless for us to demand for a seat at the Security Council when we are not strengthening our intra-African trade. We have critical minerals, we have other natural resources in Africa. We're not trading with each other enough. Yeah. Even the BRICS conglomerate, we are not taking it to its full potential. Because if we become economically independent, then we can demand the political power that we need right now. We'll be able to utilize it. So long as the US is the one pumping money into the UN, even if we sit at the Security Council, our voices will be muted. We need to stand up. We need to ensure that the African resources that we keep shipping to the US itself, every day, we stop doing that. We beneficiate them in Africa, and we trade with each other, and we're able to stand on our own economically, and then we can change the multilateral system to be democratic, to be inclusive, and to be reformed and transformed.
Yeah, but if we have to face reality, 8 years on, the 80th sitting, are we likely going to come out of this and President Cyril Ramaphosa will return with still unfulfilled expectations around debt, around climate change, around, as you've already mentioned, the recognition of the statehood of Palestine?
Look, we are hopeful, and we love what the state is doing. It's good for South Africa to do that. They're acting in the national interest. They're also acting to restore the rule of law at the international level, which are things that we need for a peaceful society. We don't want a repeat of World War II, because that would, that will end everybody's comforts and ways of life in Africa, especially. But to think that soon after this sitting, we're going to see major reforms, we'll be lying to ourselves. Yet we must continue to see our government pushing, because the voices must not be muted. They must continue to be vibrant. They must continue to be heard. They must continue to place South Africa on the map as the pioneer and as the forerunner for the protection of fundamental rights and for guarding international law as it is. Because what Israel has done with the perpetration of genocide says to us as South Africa, we have what is called obligations erga omnes. In other words, we have a duty to prevent and to punish genocide, to do whatever it takes to deal with a genocidal state. Yeah. And South Africa has been doing that. It is now doing that at the UN level by calling for those reforms and by holding Israel accountable at the international level.
So while you mentioned that, I mean, the very same issue of blocking visas, I mean, that is illegal in itself, and Trump knows that, because as part of the 1947 international treaty, a state cannot block another state from participating, irrespective of the relationship that they have with that state. Do you think this is going to spark another Geneva session like the Ronald Reagan administration when they blocked Yasser Arafat?
It would be interesting. It would actually be necessary for states to engage at that level. Because if we talk sovereignty, we talk the sovereign equality of states. The US needs to understand it is equal to any other state. It might be economically superior in many ways, but it is still a state like any other. The bullying tendencies need to turn away. I mean, it need to fall by the wayside. But the one thing you would need to ask yourself as an individual is, why are states not using the power they have? You get yourself blocked from accessing another state, but you still allow that state to come through to yours. For instance, an American can land at Ortambo right now, just come in and stay for 90 days, 70 days, 120 days. Nobody would ask him anything. It's the power of their passport. They're able to do that all across the world. You would need to pay money. You know, Donald Trump wants to move that visa to 100,000 US dollars because he wants to prevent me and you from traveling to New York or Washington, D.C. They're using the visa game. If a judge of the ICC makes a ruling that Trump is not happy with, he's going to abuse his visa regime to say that judge can never come to America, will deny him a visa. They even threaten to arrest them when they arrive in America. So we do need to go back to the drawing board. But until Trump exits office, the policy of the U.S. will be as arrogant and as aggressive as it is now. It's the American way of, the Republican way of life, unfortunately.
Prof, appreciate your time. Thanks so much for coming on. That's Professor Angelo Dube, Director of the School of Law at the University of South Africa.